People doing extraordinary things to help others.
If he didn't do what he did, we would have died.
Heroic acts that have sometimes meant the difference between life and death.
And he was just crying, "Don't let me die, don't let me die, save me, save me."
Amazing acts of courage.
It was just a natural reaction. This guy needs help.
Captured on dash cams, CCTV, and mobile phones. Incredible stories from the UK.
He put his life at risk just to save me.
And across the world.
Mayday, mayday, mayday.
All the people that assisted with my rescues that day are my heroes.
We genuinely owe our lives to him.
Today on Saved on Camera. Two friends on holiday in Kenya face disaster as their fishing boat sinks.
I knew that the clock was ticking, and as soon as it got dark, we were done. It was terrifying.
In Alabama, USA, a skydiving student in a panic spins out of control, endangering his and the instructors' lives.
He kind of just pushed off the plane without actually stepping off the plane. It immediately sent us all under our backs.
I come out of the plane and we start flipping around, the horizon's spinning. Your orientation gets pretty messed up when you start doing that.
Thought I was going to die.
In the UK's Lake District, a climber makes a wrong move, causing him to take a fall.
Smacked into the cliff 20 feet below.
Having injured his foot, the only way to rescue him is by helicopter. But there's a problem.
The helicopter pilot started saying, "This is a really windy night. I'm really struggling."
And in London, a fire has started in the middle of the night in a block of flats.
He was shouting and screaming that his friend was trapped in a flat across the road. It was a basement flat and it was on fire.
The residents are all asleep.
Just get out.
They need to get them out, and quickly.
Spin it up the smoke.
Mayday, mayday, mayday. 10 miles off the coast of Mombasa. Sinking.
A dream trip for two men turns into their worst nightmare.
Mayday, we're going down, we're going down, we're going down. We're essentially dead in the water.
Miles from shore in the Indian Ocean, with no means of communication and darkness falling, they must try to hang on until help arrives.
I've never felt so helpless in my life. What happens if nobody comes? We're gonna die.
Friends Ash and Mark first met at a festival close to both their hearts.
Glastonbury Festival, I've been going since 1997 and never missed a year. That's where I met Mark around 12 years ago. Bit of a random encounter, actually. We'd just been watching Snoop Dogg on the Pyramid stage, I think. We just hit it off straight away. Yeah, it's just like an instant connection, friendship. It was good. 11, 12 years later, we're still going together now. It spawned a great friendship.
But keen for new adventures, they decided to swap the muddy fields of Glastonbury for the sandy shores of Kenya.
Mark's been going to Kenya for the last few years with his daughter. So he suggested, instead of Glastonbury, let's go to Kenya. I'm like, awesome. Well, I'll take them on safari, show you around the country. It'd be an amazing experience.
And for Mark, there's another pull to Kenya.
I've been big game fishing, particularly in Kenya, since I was 9, 10 years old, on the boat nearly every morning.
Seasoned fisherman Mark was excited that Ash was going to join him this time.
We decided to book just one half-day trip, just as a taster for him. Virtually no interest at all in fishing. It's not really my bag. However, the prospect of a day out on the ocean and on a cool boat and all that, I thought, well, yeah, that sounds pretty cool, and give it a go.
And the day started off promisingly.
So when I first saw the fishing boat, I was expecting some little tin pot wooden fishing boat, but no, it was a big twin-engined yacht-type sports boat.
So we set off quite early in the morning, myself, Ash and a crew of 5.
And within half an hour, we catch these tuna.
And I was buzzing that Ash had caught something.
So I thought, yeah, this is good, this. But then it just all got a bit quiet.
Which is the normal in big game fishing, where you can spend hours and hours with no activity. So the skipper decided to steam a little bit further down the coast to find another spot where he thought there might be some more fish activity. We're going further and further out to sea. We ended up probably about 9-10 miles offshore. Ash was having a little kip. I was chatting to the crew.
So I kind of woke up from my doze, a little bit groggy. Then all of a sudden, all hell breaks loose. The reel starts whirring, and the crew just jump into life, and it's Marlin, 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 Marlin.
It was all systems go, as they'd caught one of the fastest fish in the world.
We'd hooked this black marlin, which is kind of like the holy grail of game fishing.
Mark's got into the fighting chair and he's battling with this fish. Everybody was excited. He's clearly in his element.
The fish then takes 100, 200 metres of line, dancing on the surface, jumping.
And I'm sat on the upper deck watching all this and thinking, oh, come on, mate, get it done.
The captain of the boat puts both engines on full power.
The boat was having to get reversed and repositioned and basically trying to track or follow the fish. And in doing all this manoeuvring, quite a lot of water was washing over onto the lower deck.
The boat's designed to take on an element of water on the deck, but it was quite obvious there was more water on the boat than there should have been.
The increasing amount of water on board was starting to ring alarm bells, but the crew seemed to have it under control. But for how long?
They went and opened up the hatch to look down into the engine room. And when they came up, you know, there was a clear look of concern on their faces.
The water was rising faster than they could bail it out, and panic was starting to set in.
At the back of the boat's going under. The owner of the boat comes upstairs. He's got panic or fear or something in his eyes.
And even first-time fisherman Ash could tell the situation was looking precarious.
Ash said to me at that time, he's like, are we going to be okay, mate? And I wasn't completely sure that we didn't have quite a serious problem.
The crew were still making desperate but futile attempts to avoid the boat sinking.
The captain decided to put both engines on full power.
I think the idea was either gun it until we get to shore, or at least get as close as we can.
But the boat's taken on that much water, the engine's under strain.
2 or 3 minutes into that, one of the engine failed. Oh, no.
The engine alarm's going off, so you've got beep, 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 beep. Not long after that, the second engine goes. We're essentially dead in the water.
That's when the Mayday call went out.
Mayday, Mayday, Mayday.
Mayday, Mayday, we're going down, we're going down, we're going down.
That's the last thing you want to be hearing when you're on a boat.
As the boat began sinking, the panic on board escalated.
The alarm's going off, the boat's starting to tilt.
We're sinking, we're going down.
When their SOS call was received, there was a glimmer of hope.
Somebody from the shore picked up the Mayday call, saying, you know, where are you?
But that hope was to be cruelly dashed.
There wasn't any GPS on the boat, so we couldn't give any coordinates.
Oh, the situation's bad at this point.
And time was running out as the boat started to sink from under them.
At this stage, the boat is going on its side, so we're all clambering over the side of the boat. People are slipping off the boat and we're holding them back on.
Mayday, Mayday, Mayday.
The boat was going to sink. We knew we needed to get off it. It was at this point when I said to the guys that when this thing goes down, we need to make sure we're well away from it. And everyone moves away and let go of the boat, and down it went.
Within a couple of minutes, the whole thing just went.
Later, miles from shore and with no help in sight, fear takes hold of the men.
I said to Ash, don't mention the S word.
Then it's spelled out S-H-A-R-K. It was harrowing times, man.
In America, a man learning to skydive goes horribly wrong.
I thought I'd lost both instructors, and the rules of skydiving is lose one, continue with the skydive, lose two, pull.
His actions done in panic make everything worse.
When he pulled out the pilot chute to deploy the parachute, it went around Jason's neck.
Jason Hills has a passion for extreme sports, one of which takes place 14,000 feet in the air.
I love skydiving. It's freedom. I don't think about anything else but just what I'm doing at that moment. Everything leaves my mind. It's kind of like my therapy.
Jason chose a center in Alabama to make his 4th ever skydive. Instructors Sam and Stephen were there to prepare him.
It's usually not a problem teaching somebody on the ground, but when you get up in the air and there's the stress and the sensations and the noise, and it's almost like fight or flight, and they're just they're worried about surviving.
As they reached 14,000 feet, Jason's fears had heightened.
As soon as it got to altitude, it became real when that door opened.
The jump is supposed to be, you exit the plane with 2 instructors holding on to you.
The student's supposed to give us a count, like a 1, 2, go. And we got the 1, 2, go, but he never really went. He kind of just pushed off the plane without actually stepping off the plane. And once that happened, it just kind of got a little weird from there.
It was like I was pulled out of the door and almost thrown over the top of Jason.
The unique situation in this one was he was upside down, like immediately out the door. Usually, they flip over as we're going out.
I come out of the plane and you start flipping around, the horizon's spinning. Your orientation gets pretty messed up when you start doing that.
With the clock ticking, the instructors must get this dive under control. But in the chaos, the worst happened.
I opted to let go because Steven, he seemed to be more in control than I was.
I thought that I was the one that was supposed to let go. After I let go, I realized that no one was holding on to Jason.
I knew I had lost Steven, I knew I had lost Sam, and I was alone in the air.
He was starting to rotate, and generally when a student starts to rotate, it only gets faster and a little more violent.
I thought I'd lost both instructors, and the rules of skydiving is lose one, continue with the skydive, lose two, pull.
Due to Jason's orientation, when he pulled out the pilot chute to deploy the parachute, it just went through the middle of them and then around Jason's neck.
When it was wrapped around my neck, I thought I was going to die.
His instructors had only seconds to react before the main parachute would open and likely strangle Jason.
When the pilot shoots out, the parachute's right behind it. I was just trying to make sure to get the lines out from around his neck before the parachute came out.
In the nick of time, Sam had managed to remove the lines from Jason's neck.
There was definitely a huge relief that he had a parachute and was going to be able to fly it now.
But as Jason had pulled the whole parachute too early, he was about to lose contact with his instructors.
After his parachute deployed, we separated from each other and came on down to a lower altitude before opening our parachutes. First thing we were trying to do is make radio contact so he didn't fly too far away from the airport.
Usually, you're not under canopy very long before you have radio communication with your instructor. The problem was I had opened so high, I floated around for 6,000 feet before I had radio communication with him.
Finally, the ground was within reach. He just needed to land.
He landed about like a typical student does. They usually land a little bit hard on their first, I would say, 6 landings before they actually figure it out.
When I got to the ground, it was relief. It was just amazing. I was so happy that I lived through that.
After such a close shave, all 3 men had made it down pretty unscathed.
It was a little jokey and light because we try not to make it seem like, you know, oh my God, dude, you just almost died.
It was more of just a camaraderie and laughing about it, and hopefully it won't happen again.
And despite his close call, Jason, a natural-born adrenaline junkie, isn't planning on curbing his skydiving anytime soon.
A lot of people would have quit skydiving after that jump and maybe started bowling. But not me. I came back and my jump count's around 240 skydives.
But this is one skydive instructor Sam is not adding to his list of best adventures ever.
To date, the jump with Jason is my worst student jump that I've had. I actually have not had a student get away from me, deploy around his neck. Yes, this was quite a unique situation, honestly.
And Jason knows he owes his life to Sam and colleague Stephen.
I was so thankful to those guys. They did what they were supposed to, but they're very humble about it. They saved my life.
Earlier, we saw 2 friends stranded in the Indian Ocean.
Mayday, mayday.
After the boat they'd chartered for their fishing boat sank.
Within a couple of minutes, the whole thing just went. And down it went, and that was it.
With their Mayday calls having gone unanswered, they feared the worst.
We are adrift, 10 or so miles offshore, and we're at the mercy of the ocean. It was terrifying.
Now, in deep water, adrenaline and survival instincts kicked in fast.
We needed to stick together, so we created a circle, and we all held on to each other's buoyancy aids and rings, and so we were like, you know, nobody let go of anybody.
But as the men treaded water, fears were starting to surface.
For me, our biggest risk was drowning. What happens if nobody comes? We're going to drown? We know we're going to die. Never felt so helpless in my life. I knew that the clock was ticking, and as soon as it got dark, we were done.
What they didn't know was that their Mayday call had been picked up by a Singaporean oil tanker waiting to port in Mombasa. Chief Officer Lucas Hopp and Captain Robert Mikalski heard the call.
We were on the bridge together, and then suddenly we hear on the VHF Mayday calling.
Mayday, mayday, mayday. Dreamcatcher.
Mayday, name of the vessel, Dreamcatcher, and we are going down.
It's human's life. That's the most important for us to rescue them. And then we start looking around to try to find them.
Despite wanting to help, without exact coordinates, they were searching for a needle in a haystack.
It's a very large area to search for, so it is very, very big problem to find the vessel.
Back with the men, drowning wasn't the only worry for the group left floating in the open ocean.
There was a point where I said to Ash, don't mention the S word. And I thought he meant shipwreck. And then he spelled out S-H-A-R-K, shark. And I'm like, what on earth have you said that for? Because I'd never even crossed my mind at all about sharks in the water until he said that. And of course, once he said that, that's all I could think about. So that was going to, be a concern, especially after it got dark. I became very aware of how much I was paddling my feet, treading water, and I made a conscious effort to minimise my movement.
We observed some fishing boat. We had binoculars, and the distance was about 8 miles. The vessel was capsizing.
The swell was incredible, really. You know, 3, 4, 5 meters at a time. All you could see was a wall of ocean. It was unbelievable, unbelievable.
So you're scanning the coastline. On the horizon, we could see a ship.
Finally, they had a glimmer of hope.
All our focus was on this vessel. What if it just keeps going? What if it hasn't seen us? What if it just sails past us? Because I knew that that was pretty much our only chance. Nobody else were coming. And if this tanker doesn't stop, we're done.
And we just watched it about 40 minutes of heading towards us, but not directly to us, but heading in our direction.
Anyway, it was difficult to see. We could see only heads. We could see only heads in the water.
And I guess it got to about half a mile away from us, and then it just stopped in the water. And it sat there for what seemed like an eternity, with nothing happening at all.
It was harrowing times, man.
Finally, the ship's lifeboat was on its way, and the wait looked to be over.
We lowered the boat, and in about 5 minutes, we were very close to the people in the water.
Then I swam out, got the rope, and then took that back to the crew, and then we all ultimately pulled ourselves up on the rope.
We just start pulling them to our lifeboat to pick them up on board.
As the nightmare came to an end, Ash was overwhelmed as he stepped onto the lifeboat.
I looked up, and the guy piloting the boat, Chief Officer Hop, looked down at me.
I said to him, now you're safe.
So all the adrenaline and everything else just left my body, and I just absolutely crumbled.
Yeah, he looks happy that he's on the boat now.
And that was it. It was the most amazing feeling.
But there was one last challenge they had to face.
Picking up survivors from the water was only the first part of the rescuing operation. When they came alongside the vessel, it was the second part, which was also very difficult because of swell and state of the sea.
As we were looking out, we could see the ladder doing this, and there was a very real danger of us getting smashed and squashed between the lifeboat and the ship.
One more difficult thing was that all those survivors had seasick, so they were weak at the moment of climbing to the ladder.
Thankfully, there was a large crew on the tanker to assist with the final stage of the rescue.
When all of them were on board safely, I took a deep breath, and I was happy that we could save them.
And they just really looked after us, you know. Chief Officer Hop reappeared. He came to see us, made sure we were okay.
Lots of crew members were coming up and asking if they could take our photos. They've been involved in quite a major rescue operation, and they wanted to come and see who they'd plucked out of the ocean.
Now safe, the adrenaline left the men, and the reality of the ordeal hit them both.
Me and Ash, we literally just looked at each other and were like, wow, like, I cannot believe what we've just been through, and we're so, so lucky.
In the Lake District in the UK, a dramatic ground and air rescue is launched when a climber falls off the side of a mountain.
Next thing I remember was just smacked into the cliff 20 feet below.
Keswick, a market town sitting at the north of England's Lake District. It's a popular stop-off for tourists and outdoor adventurers, and it attracted Bob Woods and his wife to open their own B&B in 2004.
We're very lucky to live here in the Lake District because everyone's so friendly. Everyone's here for almost the same reasons. Everyone just loves the outdoors.
Bob's days are full, and not just with the B&B.
I play in a ukulele band in Cockermouth called the Kooks. I do a lot of mountain biking, lots of climbing, weather permitting. I've been climbing 15, 16 years, 17 years. So I'm very competent. My head, which is the most important part, my head generally is all over it.
But it's not his head that is the problem. It is his sense of direction, something Bob would admit causes a few jokes in his local climbing club.
I've got a very big reputation for getting lost on routes, and I'm often wandering all over the place, which brings lots of amusement to lots of people. Even me, because it's like, you know, what's the worst that can happen?
Bob was going to find that out, and on a special day too.
It was a Keswick Mountain Club meet, and it just happened on my birthday, July the 18th. It was Miners Crag. Miners Crag is over on the Newlands Valley, so it's quite remote. It's not so well climbed, so there's lots of stuff where there's never been grabbed hold of before.
The climbers divided into pairs. Having started with a relatively easy climb, Bob and his partner Dave decided to take it up a notch.
Harler is hard, very severe, but we were warmed up and we're both quite competent, so off we went. The first part was really straightforward and I led it very comfortably.
Their first position, known as a pitch, they'd successfully climbed, and it was Bob's partner Dave who took the second ascent.
He went up maybe 15 feet-ish, and he said, "Oh, blimey, this feels a lot harder, Bob. Do you fancy having a go?" And I got 15 feet above Dave, and I said, I put a bit of gear in. A cam is like a little device. You push a little sort of lever on the end of it, and it gets smaller. And then when you feed it into the crack, then it just gets wider in the crack and hopefully holds. And I clipped it and I said to Dave, if I fall on this, there is no way on earth this is stopping me going anywhere. I moved up past it and I just reached up my left hand to quite a small crimp, put my fingers on it, and it just all collapsed underneath my fingers, and then I fell backwards. I smacked into the cliff 20 feet below Dave. Dave is now taking my full weight, going at whatever miles per hour.
Moving at that speed could drag both climbers off the crag.
David put a bit of gear in, and lucky enough that held both of us. So this one tiny little bit of gear, about an inch wide in the crack, had both of us hanging on it.
The pair were dangling off the cliff, and Bob knew a further fall would likely have been fatal.
It was just pure rock underneath us. It was just lots of rocks. And hopefully it'd just been very quick.
Later, things go from bad to worse.
I just sort of sat for a couple of minutes, stood up, agony, sat down, stood up again stupidly. The pain was awful.
Earlier, we saw friends Ash and Mark rescued following their fishing boat sinking off the coast of Mombasa. Six months later, and back on dry land, Mark and Ash are meeting up for the first time with the men who saved them.
You know, Ash was sort of, it was never his kind of thing. He was like, you said this was going to be a good trip out. You know, look what's happened. I was like, oh my word.
Actually, when we were still in Kenya, it wasn't so bad. But once we got home back to the UK, that's when you know, you see your family and all the rest. That's when the shock of it all hit more so, I think.
And how thankful we are to you for,
of course,
you know,
of course. Saved our lives.
Yeah.
Literally, saved our lives.
My only worry was that if you can climb with no injury on board
right,
the vessel.
Yeah, that was quite a climb up the side of the tanker. But not that it mattered. But yeah, but what a relief, you know, and of course you're the first face that I saw, and you look down at me and you said,
that was a good face to see. It's like,
yeah, so you look, I'm all obviously stressed, and I looked up and you looked down and you went, you're safe now. And as soon as you said that, I just crumbled completely.
The men know just how lucky they were and who they owe their lives to.
If we hadn't spotted them, they would have been in a hopeless situation because it was some 5 hours until darkness, and after darkness, it would be impossible to find them in the water.
All of us on the boat owe our lives to the crew of the oil tanker. I genuinely believe, had they not found us, we wouldn't be here today.
As for next year's adventures, the friends have some important decisions to make.
Yeah, so we haven't thought about next year yet. Go back for the 50th anniversary of Glastonbury and go back to what we know and do every year. Maybe I will go back to Glastonbury, maybe, I don't know. But certainly no more boats.
In the UK, a police officer searching a house is interrupted by a neighbour.
Was shouting and screaming that his friend was trapped in a flat across the road. It was a basement flat and that it was on fire.
He rushes into the smoke-filled building to alert the residents.
It was pretty bad, you couldn't see the exit at all.
But can this police officer get everybody out in time?
We need to keep on at them. Look, we need to get out now, get out now.
Just get out, it's just filling up with smoke.
PC Neil Dobson is a police dog handler and has been with the force for 22 years.
It's all I wanted to do since I joined the police. I'd had dogs all my life. I wanted to work dogs and I think it's the best job in the world. I like helping people, obviously, and I like going out there and making a difference. My bread and butter work is normally searching for people that run away from the police, searching for drugs in vehicles, drugs in houses, firearms and hidden cash.
But on this night in Croydon, PC Dobson becomes involved in an emergency that's not his usual type of call-out.
I was searching a house for drugs when we had a knock at the door from a member of the public who was shouting and screaming that his friend was trapped in a flat across the road. It was a basement flat and that it was on fire. As soon as you're told there's a fire, the lives are in danger, so everything you're doing right there and then gets dropped. We came out of the address, looked across the road and saw smoke bellowing out of the windows of the flat and can hear the guy inside screaming. I've run to the back of my car to put my dog away. 3 of my colleagues have run across the road and they've managed to drag the guy out through a kitchen window. It was then that a member of the public pointed out that this basement flat was connected to flats above, which were 3 stories high. And being 1 o'clock in the morning, everyone's asleep.
With thick smoke rising rapidly into the upstairs flats and residents unaware of the situation, PC Dobson races inside to raise the alarm.
You don't think, you just do. It's just kind of an instinct thing. There's people in trouble, and I know that if it was one of my family members, I'd know I'd want someone to go in and help them. So at that point, you just start shouting, fire, fire, get out.
Fire's growing, yeah? Just get out.
And you can't really rely on them. There may be vulnerable people that can't hear, can't see, disabilities, so every single flat had to be visibly cleared.
PC Dobson has to think fast to avoid potential disaster.
It was at that point that I realised, actually, I've really got to just start kicking doors in, because there wasn't time to allow for people to react and come out and put their clothes on. It's a case of you need to get out now, because the smoke was starting to fill up into the ground floor. There were 2 girls that came in with me into the flats and they were helping residents out. There was a mum and a baby that needed some help getting out of the flat. They were helping them. My job pretty much was the brute force of getting all the doors open. I got all the way up to the 3rd floor. It was ticking in my mind that I didn't have long inside. I was concerned about the smoke coming up, because it was already on the ground floor when I went in. You're wondering, what's it going to be like when I come back down? The smoke had now hit the 1st floor. It's disorientating when you can't see, and it's a little bit confusing, and obviously you can't breathe, so you have to hold your breath.
Go, I can't see.
You could see probably about to sort of here. It was pretty bad. You couldn't see the exit at all.
But with the smoke rising and time running out, PC Dobson gave it one last go.
Tried kicking and kicking it, then we realised it was bolted from the inside.
PC Dobson manages to get into the last flat and thankfully discover that nobody is home.
I forced in probably about 8 to 9 doors. Yeah, and it was the final one that bust my foot. It was the fact that I was aided by a big adrenaline rush, so You don't even notice it at the time. It wasn't till probably about 2 hours after the incident that I went to get out of the car and stood on my foot, and then I was like, ouch.
PC Dobson guided the disorientated residents through the thick smoke towards the exit.
People were standing out now on the street in dressing gowns, and you hear the fire engines coming and you realise how serious it is.
Usually, it's the fire brigade who are first on the scene of a fire, so it comes as quite a surprise to Station Officer Catherine Skinner to find police officers.
Normally, we will be there quicker and on scene dealing with the situation long before the police or the ambulance arrive. Although they said they had got everybody out, we needed to do a secondary sweep just to make sure, especially seeing as it would have been quite difficult to them in the smoke, and we needed people in breathing apparatus just to ensure that that was the case. Smoke was quite thick and black, and that certainly raises my blood pressure a little bit, because what I'm sending my firefighters into could be a dangerous situation. A basement's a particularly dangerous place for a fire. Quite often there's very limited ventilation, difficult to gain access. You have to go through a heat barrier descending into a basement. There is a potential for a greater loss of life.
After a thorough search of the building, firefighters confirm that no residents are left inside the smoke-filled building.
I was concerned when we first arrived that it would spread to neighbouring flats or the flats above, but because the crew was so quick in their attack on the fire, we did contain it to the original flat.
With all residents accounted for and thinking nothing of his heroic actions, it was business as usual for PC Dobson.
And basically, I came out and obviously the carnage outside of people in shock. They were treated by ambulance crews and fire brigade, and I then left the scene. So I literally went straight back into shift mode and cracked on with the rest of my shift.
It's great that the police were there so early to get people out, because the smoke would have been getting worse and worse. So the earlier the occupants were out, the better. And it certainly made our lives easier knowing that we didn't have 4 floors worth of occupants to evacuate ourselves.
I spoke to my sergeant afterwards and told him that I'd injured my foot. He said he'd look at my body cam footage to see how the injury took place so he could do the injury report, and then obviously he saw the whole incident take place.
PC Dobson's own safety was the last thing on his mind.
All I wanted was peace of mind that everybody did get out, because the smoke was that bad that I think you probably would not have survived much longer in there. Will I do it again? Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I wouldn't even think about it. To me, it's just doing my job.
Oh, good lad. Good lad.
Back in the UK, 2 climbers are dangling off a cliff, held on by just a tiny bit of gear. If it fails, they face certain injury or even death.
It was just pure rock underneath us. It was just lots of rocks. And hopefully it's just been very quick. 10, 15 minutes later, a couple of the guys had finished the climb, they'd seen us, so they made their way across and they fixed themselves into the rock. Then they fixed themselves to Dave, and they got Dave back up onto the ledge. And they had me tied off. They just said, Bob, we're gonna have to lower you down. So they lowered me down gently to where the first place I stopped, where I could sort of like get myself really comfortable.
Here, Bob realised his injuries.
I just sort of sat for a couple of minutes, stood up, agony, sat down, stood up again stupidly. The pain was awful.
They were going to need to be rescued, and the call came through to the Keswick Mountain Rescue Team and John Hunston.
Somebody who's fallen from a crack and potentially have much more serious injuries. They might have some internal bleeding, which is always difficult to contend with on the hill.
As John reached the scene, he was surprised to see a familiar face.
I thought I recognised him, and Bob said to me, "Hello, John." So, "Oh, hello, Bob. What are you doing here?" It's very strange to rescue somebody that you find you know.
But any catch-up between the friends would have to wait, as the question of rescuing Bob was much more pressing.
The first thing they did, they assessed where I'd fallen from, what I fell on, and what parts were hurting. When he just touched my heel, it was like He said, we're not sure, it says, but it could be a broken heel.
His injury would stop Bob being able to climb down, even with the mountain rescue team as his guide.
The particular area that he was in was extremely broken and bouldery and unpleasant. So getting air support in that sort of situation helps enormously.
We're about 3.5 hours in now. And then there's like the great big, and this great big red and white helicopters appeared, sort of like 400 or 500 feet above.
Right away, there was a problem.
The helicopter pilot started saying, this is a really windy night up here. I'm gonna have to try and line up into the wind. And he tried it about 4 or 5 times, and he said, this is, you know, I'm really struggling. Eventually, maybe 30 minutes later, he felt confident enough to lower his winchman down.
But the elements were getting worse for the pilot.
He said, it's so windy now. He said, we can't start winching you in because the wind is, you're going to start spinning. We're just going to, like, go up a little and just fly off at speed to keep the stretcher in a straight position.
An enduring vision of him sort of disappearing into the sunset underneath his helicopter.
When Bob made it inside the helicopter, the crew did their best to end his ordeal on a happy note.
The blokes winched me into the helicopter, and they started doing all the paperwork there and said, oh, July the 18th. And then they started singing happy birthday to me, which was really nice, because nobody else had that day. They were the first.
At the hospital, X-rays confirmed that Bob did, in fact, break his heel. But he knows it could have been much worse.
If I'd have hit my head on my neck, that would have been all over there, maybe, so I did get away with it.
Bob knows that it's all down to the skills and dedication of Keswick Mountain Rescue, and he still pops in to visit them and update them on his fundraising activities.
Hiya, John.
All right,
How you doing?
Good to see you again.
I was just walking past. I thought I'd pop in and say hello.
Yeah, that's nice. That's nice.
How's Tricks?
Is it 2 years ago now?
2 years July.
Is it? Is it? Yeah.
But still hurting.
Is it?
Still hurting.
Oh dear.
Doctor said 1 year, now it's been 2+, and I'm still, still not quite right.
So what does that stop you doing?
Nothing.
Oh right, good.
I'm just it's not a pain, it's discomfort. It's as opposed to pain.
Yeah.
Bob, though, retains a positive outlook on the events of that July day.
It wasn't a bad way to finish a day up. A nice helicopter ride in the sunset.
It was a great birthday present, wasn't it?
Oh,
Helicopter
right,
ride.
Yeah,
you pay a lot for that.
I'm sure I owe somebody a lot of money for that. Especially you guys, walking all the way in.
And he has a fundraising update for John after a successful busking event with his ukulele.
So we started at 11, and by 1 o'clock we had raised about 300 quid plus. We know it's going to a very, very good cause.
Yeah, that's fantastic. We really appreciate that.
I was very, very lucky, yeah. It could have gone very, very wrong.